Hey, good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon, and welcome to 24th Street Theater, and welcome to our Saturday Explorer series.
Hola a todos y todas, bienvenidos a nuestra serie de exploradores de los sábados del Teatro 24.
Soy Jay McAdams. I'm the executive director of this great theater. Thank you very much.
I am Jesús Castaño Chima, director artístico asociado.
We also want to introduce our friend Deanna Paff, our sign interpreter all the way from Long Island. Thank you, Deanna.
Hey, Diana.
And speaking of sound, I love the sound of this applause. I haven't heard that sound in this theater for 14 months.
Yeah,
Making me feel good.
But that is only because we have Brad in the house right now.
That is true.
Hey.
Our musician Brad Broff is supplying the audience applause and
Hey, guys.
laughter today.
Good afternoon.
Because we know that you are not yet with us, but you will be soon. You'll be back soon. Everything's still kind of in that reopening phase, but we appreciate you being with us online in the meantime. And Brad, we appreciate you continuing to bring the laughter and applause into the room, keeping the Zoom room where it happens going.
Zoom. 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 Those are
For
the
you
magic
Hamilton
words.
fans out there. We just showed you some pictures of our Explorer series. Some of them date back to the 20th century, believe it or not. That's how long ago we started this series, in
Yes.
1998.
So far, we have almost 100.
That's right, and all kinds of performances. We've had not just theater, but dance and digital art. We've had puppetry, we've had poetry, a lot of live music, opera, all kinds of performance art, because the design of it was to have a sophisticated series for family audiences. So this year we have 4 storytellers bringing us stories from all around the world.
As a matter of fact, we have stories from 4 different continents. We have stories from Asia, Africa, Europe, and of course, America.
And we wanted to focus on storytelling this year, partly because of the year we've just had. Everybody's been in isolation. And we thought, well, now, wouldn't it be good with an art form with one person talking and another person listens? Just personal art, getting back to basics.
But you know why it's really important to tell stories right now, Jay?
Why?
Because it makes us feel empathy. Don't you think so?
Empathy. The magic ingredient of theater, right?
Absolutely.
And something we sure need a lot more of in the world right now. I think we all agree, empathy. And hey, raise your hand if you know what empathy means. Good. Glad Deanna knows. If you don't know, it's simple. It's when you feel for somebody else. That's empathy. Speaking of empathy, I have a lot of empathy for our first storyteller because I've known him for 35 years. This person, Chima, was my first director when I did a play in college, very first play.
So you met him in Oklahoma.
That's right, and he's performing today from Oklahoma City live.
Wow.
Al Bostick is an actor, he's also a director, he's a writer, he's a storyteller, he's a musician, he's a man of many hats.
Stop it. Let's bring him in.
Al Bostick, are you with us, Al?
Hey Jay, hey Chima.
Hey, Al.
How you doing?
How are you? How's everything by Cowtown right now?
Oh, it's being Cowtown.
Chima thinks of Cowtown. For those of you who don't know, in Oklahoma City, we call the stockyard district of the town Cowtown.
Oh, yes.
And a few years ago, Chima was on a cross-country tour doing a show for us, and he went through and stopped at Cattleman's to have a good meal.
Yeah, I still remember the steak that I had. It's one of the best I ever had in my entire life.
I ordered for him on FaceTime, Al.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you didn't order him the lamb fries or the cow fries.
Google that, folks. So, Al, you have for us some stories from Africa today, yes?
That's correct. The Anansi the Spider stories.
And I know this only because you have taught it to me that these are more than just stories about a little spider. There's a lot of historic significance to these stories.
Yes, Anansi is an Akan trickster. And the thing about Anansi is he was used to teach lessons to the people of the tribe. So Anansi has very human characteristics.
And you also told me that part of the brilliance of him was, this small creature outwitting every other creature in the kingdom.
Yes, the wonderful thing about the animal stories of Africa is that usually the smaller animals represent the common man. The larger animals are usually the people in power, and it is through their wit, their wisdom, and their creativity the smaller animals were able to overcome the larger animals, thus teaching you that you can be powerful no matter what size, no matter who you are, no matter what your status is.
Wow. You also taught me that these stories have significance with regard to slaves back in the day finding their freedom by using stories to send secret information to each other.
Yes,
right?
when the African was brought over from West Africa to America, they were forbidden to use their languages and their drums and all of their dances and what have you. So storytelling was the thing that remained. However, the spider was considered, a little bit scary to them, to the enslavers. So Anansi began to morph as he traveled. When he first went to Jamaica, he became Anansi the Spider, or Sealing Thomas. He was the original Spider-Man. When he went from there to America during the enslavement, he morphed into a rabbit, Brer Rabbit. I mean, who's afraid of a rabbit? Nobody. But then he went from there to South Carolina, and he became a woman, Aunt Nancy.
Wow, so many incarnations.
Right, and again with those ideas, they used Anansi the Spider stories to communicate, and also to show them ways to get to freedom and so forth. There are many ways that the enslaved did this with their messages. One of the ways was they actually quilted. They quilted a map of the Underground Railroad to let people know which direction to go, hung those quilts outside of their windows, and that people who could read the codes knew exactly which way to go. When they were not allowed to do the quilting, the ladies began to keep their cornrows in their hair, and they actually cornrowed maps in their hair. So were able to come and read the maps that way. But because they were found out, then that gave law to what we call the Tignon law, particularly in Louisiana, where then the woman had to cover her head with a covering, and that's why you got that. But that couldn't be outdone because those were even more elaborate.
Wow, that's so fascinating, because on the surface, these seem like pretty innocent little children's tales, right? I mean, this is folklore, but it really sounds like sweet little stories for very young kids.
Well, exactly. The whole idea was that, when stories began to evolve, the adult stories of Anansi and of many other places, even like in Cinderella, you have these things were told for adults, but because kids were considered small adults at that time, they were able to hear them. When we got to the era of the Victorian era, then people decided that they needed to soften the stories, and they became children's tales, and we sort of adopted them as children's stories.
It also is just such a great example about how art and history are so intertwined. A lot of people think of art as just entertainment through the ages, but
Right.
Art has been involved in every major thing that's happened in this world through history, right?
You're right, and that's the reason why I coined the phrase as an artist in residence, artucation, because art is education, and also it is the way in which we hold on to our culture, our ideas, and also to teach morals and lessons to the human being.
Wow. I'm so happy to learn all this, because now when I hear the story, I'm going to be able to filter all that through it. So I'm so excited. We're going to get out of your way here, Al, and let you do your performance. But can you stick around after the show for a few minutes? Because I think some of our audience may have some questions for you.
Certainly, I'll be more than happy to.
Bueno, ¿estamos listos? Are you ready? Disfruten del maravilloso arte del cuentacuentos. Enjoy the wonderful art of storytelling. enjoy all Bostick.
Hi, welcome. And let me start by giving you a Liberian dance welcome. Listen to me. Funga alafia ashe ashe. Funga alafia ashe ashe. With my mind I welcome you. With my words I welcome you. With my heart I welcome you. I have nothing up my sleeves. So, once again, welcome, welcome, welcome. And today I'm going to give you some wonderful stories from the African continent. More importantly, these are Akan tales, Anansi the Spider, from the Ashanti tribe. Now, the first one I want to talk about is Anansi collects all the wisdom that belongs to man. See, Anansi the Spider decided one day that he should have all the wisdom that belonged to mankind. So he decided he would collect this wisdom. So he went to a gourd tree, cut down a gourd, cleaned it out, and then began to collect bits and pieces of wisdom from all around the world. And he put all of this wisdom in this gourd. Well, you can imagine collecting that much wisdom. The gourd was very, very heavy. So Anansi put a rope on it, on one end and on the other end, and then proceeded to put the rope around his neck. And then he could carry the wisdom that way. But Anansi, being Anansi, as we all know, was also a little bit selfish. Because once he collected all of that wisdom, what he said was, I am not going to share my wisdom with anybody. It belongs to me. So I have to hide it, see? So Anansi looked up, he looked down, he looked left, he looked right, and he tried to find a place to hide this wisdom when he came to a tall, tall tree in the center of the jungle. And he said, ha! That is the perfect place to hide my wisdom. So he walked up to the tree and he put one arm around, 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 one arm around. And he began to shimmy up the tree. When he got about a third of the way up to the tree, Anansi had a visitor. It was his small son. And if you know anything about small children, they are very, very inquisitive. Because this small son said, Daddy! And Anansi said, what, child? What you doing? Well, if you must know, child, I am climbing the tree. And he said, ow. So he shimmied up a little further. When the child spoke again, Daddy! Yes, child. Why are you climbing the tree? He said, well, if you must know, child, I am hiding my wisdom. And the child said, oh. So Anansi decided to go further and further up the tree. When the child had another question, of course. Daddy! Yes, child. Why are you hiding your wisdom? He said, well, child, if you must know, it is mine, it belongs to me, and I'm going to hide my wisdom at the top of this tree. And the child said, oh. So the child put one hand on his hip, and 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 he sat on the other two. And he said, Daddy! What, child? Wouldn't it be a lot easier to climb the tree if you put the gourd on your back? Anansi was so upset that this child had that one little piece of wisdom that he raised the gourd over his head and threw it at the child. The gourd fell to the earth, smashed, and wisdom spread out all over the world. And for that reason, some people got a lot of wisdom, some people got a little wisdom, and some people got no wisdom at all. Which are you? Thank you, thank you. Now, as we talked about stories, they actually evolved and changed, and they traveled. Anansi went to Jamaica, as I told you, and became Sealing Thomas, or Anansi the Spider Man. And his truth is that whenever he was afraid, he had his legs grew out from his thoracic cavity. He changed into a small spider and lived in the corners, and that is how he got the name Sealing Thomas. Well, as I said, he had human qualities. So this Anansi story is about the day that Anansi went to the market to buy a pig. He said, to market, to buy a fat pig. Home again, jiggity jig. To market, to buy a fat hog. Home again, jiggity jog. Now, as Anansi came to a small fence called a stile, he looked at the pig, he said, pig, 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 please jump me stile. If you don't jump me stile, I shall not get home in a while. And the pig said, oink, 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 no. Said Anansi. Said Anansi. Said Anansi. So he went down the road a little bit further, a tiny bit further. He went down the road just a little bit further. He came across a dog. He said, aha. He said, dog, dog, bite the pig. The pig will not jump over this stile, and I shall not get home in a while. And the dog said, ruff, 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 ruff. No. Said Anansi. Said Anansi. Said Anansi. So he went down the road a little bit further, a tiny bit further, a little bit further. He went down that road just a little bit further. He came across a stick. He said, this'll do the trick. I'm gonna use a stick. Stick, 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 beat the dog, 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 cause the dog, dog, dog won't bite the pig, pig, pig. The pig, pig, pig won't jump the stile, 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 and I cannot get home in a while. And the stick said, said Anansi. Said Anansi. Said Anansi. So he went down that road a little bit further, a tiny bit further, a little bit further. He went down that road just a little bit further. He came across some fire. Said Anansi. The fire will do as I desire. Fire, fire, burn the stick. The stick will not beat the dog will not bite the pig will not jump over the stile, and I cannot get home in a while. And the fire said, shh, no. Said Anansi. Said Anansi. Said Anansi. So he went down the road a little bit further, a tiny bit further, a little bit further. He went down that road just a little bit further. He came across some water. Aha! He said, water, water, put out the fire, because the fire won't burn the stick won't beat the dog won't bite the pig won't jump over the stile, and I cannot get home in a while. And the water said, drip, 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 no. Said Anansi. Said Anansi. Said Anansi. So he went down that road a little bit further, a little bit further, a tiny bit further. He went down that road just a little bit further. He came across an ox. Now, for those of you who do not know what an ox is, it is a member of the bovine or cow family. He has 2 large horns and a lot of fat under his chin called a dewlap. And the ox was standing there just chewing its cud. And Anansi said, oh, ox, ox, would you drink the water? Because the water will not put out the fire will not burn the stick will not beat the dog will not bite the pig will not jump over the stile, and I cannot get home in a while. And the ox said, no. Said Anansi. Said Anansi. Nothing will do what I ask it to do. I guess I'll have to go down the road a little bit further, a tiny bit further. He went down that road just a little bit further. He came across a butcher. Now, if you do not know what a butcher is a man who likes to sell meat. He likes to sell all kinds of good things to eat. But this is something he also likes to do. He likes to take the ox's tail to make oxtail stew. Ah, said Anansi. Butcher, Mr. Butcher, would you do me a favor? Would you take the ox's tail? Because the ox won't drink the water won't put out the fire won't burn the stick won't beat the dog won't bite the pig will not jump over the stile, and I cannot get home in a while. And the butcher said, no. Well, by this time, Anansi is just furious. So he went down the road a little bit further, a tiny bit further. He went down that road just a little bit further. And he came across a rope. The rope will give me hope, said Anansi. Rope, would you hang up the butcher? Because the butcher will not take the ox's tail. The ox won't drink the water won't put out the fire won't burn the stick won't beat the dog won't bite the pig will not jump over the stile, and I cannot get home in a while. And the rope said, whoosh, 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 whoosh. No! Said Anansi. Said Anansi. Said Anansi. So he went down the road a little bit further, a tiny bit further, a little bit further. He went down that road just a little bit further, and he came across a rat. Oh, said Anansi. Oh, rat, rat. Rat, would you do me the favor? Would you gnaw the rope? Because the rope will not hang up the butcher will not take the ox's tail, ox will not drink the water will not put out the fire will not burn the stick will not beat the dog will not bite the pig will not jump over the stile, and I cannot get home in a while. And the rat said, eek, 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 no! Oh, said Anansi. Oh, said Anansi. Oh, said Anansi. I cannot get anyone to do what I need him to do. So he went down the road a little bit further, a tiny bit further, a little bit further. He went down that road just a little bit further. He came across a cat. Aha! Imagine that, said Anansi. Cat, would you do me a favor? Would you catch the rat? Because the rat will not gnaw the rope will not hang up the butcher will not take the ox's tail, ox will not drink the water will not put out the fire will not burn the stick will not beat the dog will not bite the pig will not jump over the stile, and I cannot get home in a while. And the cat said, I will if you get me some milk. Milk, said Anansi. Milk, said Anansi. Milk, it does a body good, said Anansi. So he went down the road a little bit further, a tiny bit further, a little bit further. He went down that road just a little bit further, and he came across a cow. How now, brown cow, said Anansi. Oh, cow, would you give me some milk so I can give the milk to the cat? Then the cat will catch the rat will gnaw the rope will hang the butcher will take the ox's tail, the ox will drink the water will put out the fire burn the stick will beat the dog will bite the pig will jump the stile, and I can then get home in a while. And the cow said, I will if you get me some hay. Hay, said Anansi. Hey, said Anansi. Hey, said Anansi. So he went down the road a little bit further, a tiny bit further. He went down that road just a little bit further. He came across the farmer in the dell, Hi ho, the dairy-o, the farmer in the dell. Ah, Mr. Farmer, would you give me 2 handfuls of hay so I can give the hay to the cow? Then the cow will give me the milk, and I can give the milk to the cat. Then the cat will catch the rat will gnaw the rope will hang the butcher will take the ox's tail, the ox will drink the water will put out the fire will burn the stick will beat the dog will bite the pig will jump over the stile, and I can get home in a while. And the farmer said, Yep. Said Anansi. Oh, thank you, Mr. Farmer. So the farmer gave Anansi 2 handfuls of hay. He gave the hay to the cow. The cow began to munch the hay. Munch. He began to milk the cow. He gave the milk to the cat. The cat began to catch the rat. Eek! The rat began to gnaw the rope. Arr! The rope began to hang the butcher. Whoa! The butcher began to take the ox's tail. Snip, move, ouch! The ox began to drink the water. Water began to put out the fire. Fire began to burn the stick. Stick began to beat the dog. Yike! Dog began to bite the pig. Arr! Pig said, whee! And jumped over the stile. And Anansi the Spider got home in a while, home in a while, home in a while. Anansi the Spider got home in a while, singing Day-o, Day-o. Me picky jump me style, now I got home. Thank you very much.
Al Bostick.
Oh my God, that was great. Thank you.
You know, it is still surprising to me, Al. You know, hearing these stories, I would never have guessed that they had such, you know, a serious role in history. They sound like very whimsical tales for young kids.
Yes, but the hidden meaning in that, what do you learn? Persistence pays off. You learn that persistence pays off, right?
Right.
Patience will pay off.
Right. Right.
So that is the lesson that the storyteller wishes to impart to the child
Right.
and
Right.
to the adults as well. Because how impatient are we?
Very.
And this is a good time.
I
to
speak for all of us. Very.
Right. And in the theater right now, because of this COVID thing, we have to be persistent and we have to be patient.
Right, that is true. Both things are true. Hey, I know some of you at home have questions for Al, so you can type them in the chat, or you can raise your hand. And Brittany, our Zoom stage manager, hey Brittany, there you are. Brittany will put you on screen and let you ask a question. So raise your hand if you have a question for Al and would like to ask him directly. And while Brittany's looking for questions, I have one for you, Al.
Okay, go ahead.
You consider yourself, you call yourself a griot. Is that right?
Yes.
Explain that.
Yes. A griot in West African culture was the sacred person who kept the culture of the tribe. In fact, one of his major duties was to remember and recall the life of everyone in the tribe. And then if one family decided to marry another, his job was then to recite both family histories and then recite them as they co-join. They end with the co-joining of the husband and wife, and a new history is going to be begun. He also, again, was brought in front of everyone to make sure to teach the lessons. When a child misbehaved so abhorrently, they could bring him to the griot, and the griot would sit the child down and tell the story, and then send him home, making sure the child understood that. So he's the keeper of the culture, the keeper of the history, and that is what I've set myself to be charged to do in this century, to keep our history alive.
Wow, what a responsibility, right? In this,
It can be.
I mean, in this internet age, how do you think storytelling, a very classic, ancient art form, how does it, where does it fall in this modern era when we're all connected and online 24/7?
Well, with one small flaw, and that is that I, as the griot, cannot reach out and touch the person, but I can be in touch with the person. You see what I mean? So what is wonderful about being a modern day griot and going into a person live and in charge, I can actually reach out and put my hand on that child, or put my hand on that adult and absorb that energy. The screen lets me give out that energy, but hopefully I'm reaching through and passing that energy on. But it's nothing like the human touch. So I'm so anxious to get back to being able to put laying on of hands for these people.
Well, it's happening
hope so,
now, right?
yes.
It's the time. Hey, Giselle has a question in the chat. She wants to know, besides Anansi, what are your other favorite stories to tell?
Oh my goodness. Jay, I tell fairy tales, fables, myths, legends, tall tales, and folk tales. I also tell stories of my family stories. Probably my favorite story in the world to tell is a thing called Suki and the Mermaid. And because it was the first African American mermaid story that I found in my research.
When was it written? How old is it?
Because you have that argument whether, mermaids are Eurocentric inventions, right? But I didn't know that there was actually an African concept of a mermaid. And of course, her name is Mama Joe. and how Mama Joe became so beautiful for me was that I tutored a child once because the child's teacher told one of my best friend's mother, that her daughter was having trouble reading. So I brought Tari into my office, and I put the test, the vowel sounds, so forth and so on, and she didn't seem to have any problems with the sounds or anything. So I shared Suki and the Mermaid with her, and Tari was just mesmerized. So I gave her a copy of the book. So a week later, Deborah called me and said, Tari got in trouble with a teacher again. I said, what'd you get in trouble this time? She said she went and challenged the teacher and said, hey, do you know any black mermaid stories? And the teacher said, black mermaids didn't exist. Tari reached in her book bag, pulled out Suki and the Mermaid and threw it on the teacher's desk.
That's great.
Said to the teacher,
They do now.
I'd like to read it to my class, please.
Oh, that's great. That is great. Hey, our friend Lauren Bustillo wants to know how long it took you to work that second story, all the choreography and the rhythmic stuff.
That story, the choreography evolves and evolves and evolves. When I first told the story, I think I had it all down in about 2 days. I finally figured out what I needed to specifically do. So it took me 2 days to get that choreography and all of the drumming into the story.
And Charlotte Padilla wants to know when you learned that story. How long ago?
Oh my goodness. I learned the story, the original Eurocentric story. I learned that one in 5th grade, and it is called The Little Old Lady Who Bought a Pig.
Oh, really? Really? Yeah. So you changed it?
Well, I didn't change it. This is, again, this is what we talk about when we say that people reach each other. Mm-hmm. I'm sure someone, some Eurocentric person told this story with an Afrocentric person sitting there, probably during the enslavement, because that story is an old folk tale from England. They probably heard it and then morphed it into their own tale.
Hey, David Palomino, we have some teachers with us today, Al, because as you know, we do a lot of, what did you call it? Art education?
Art education, that's right.
We do a lot of arts education. Maybe I'll start using your phrase. One of our teachers asking how their students can watch this. We will put it on our website, I believe. I believe that's where you can see it. Probably on our YouTube channel. Henry has got a question for you, Albert.
All right.
Wants to know how you keep all these words in that head of yours.
Tell him I often wonder that myself. But, but I think it's the same lessons that we do as actors. How do you keep all those lines in your head?
Right.
You do it through repetition, right? You do it. The most important thing for me, though, is I have to do it out loud. I can't just sit and read it. I read the story out loud, and it comes to life and formats. Then I break it down to the important instances in the story. And then finally, I'm ready to tell that story, so I have to decide, how am I going to frame it? Musically? Am I going to frame it with just words? Because there's some stories where you just quietly sit and tell because of the words. See?
Right.
And there are others that just beg for dance, it begs for music, it begs for sound, it begs for illustration. So I have all different ways of telling those tales.
Talking about music, what about your drums? You always use them to tell your stories?
Yes, I do. They travel with me wherever I go. Nice. They have human characteristics. I have Ngoma. Her name means to drum and dance. And she has a brother named Simba.
Oh.
and I see, I can see over your shoulder, you have some drums you're using as a plant stand.
That's right. When the head goes, they get repurposed and they become plant stands.
Oh, good, because my memory's going. I can just put some plants on me later.
Yeah, we recycle everything, Jay.
I'll be useful always. That's good to know.
That's pretty scary, because where I'm from in Louisiana,
Yeah.
They have started this, embalming people and standing them up rather than using a casket.
Oh my goodness. Well, space, you know. We call that the IKEA burial model.
I call it,
hey,
going to that wake.
Hey, Al, our musician Brad Broff has a question for you. Britt, can you bring Brad on?
Yes, but Brad told me he already asked.
Yeah,
someone
you
else
guys
already
just
asked
asked
the
it. I wanted
you
to know
better
about
think
the
fast,
drum.
little music man.
Hey, I raised my hand like 5 minutes ago. I'm sorry you missed it.
Hey, Brad, tell me, do you have any musical questions? Chima was just asking Al about his drums.
Yeah, well, that's what I kind of wanted to know. Is it traditional to always tell these stories with a drum? Al?
Well, yes, there are many instruments. There's a drum. There is a kalimba, which is a thumb piano that is
Oh, yeah.
we use those. Sometimes we use go-go bells, and that's because they have two musical notes, a high and a low, but rhythm is always a part of telling African stories. So, yes, we have to have that bass line or that line of something musical happening. Sometimes we just use bells on the arms and the legs to tell stories.
Okay,
Great.
so is the drumming something that is passed down like in your family, or like did you learn that as you learned to become a storyteller, or how is that passed down?
I learned it as I became a storyteller. Now, we have a group in Congo Square in Louisiana, where I'm from, that meets on every Sunday, and we were able to go in and drum with them. So whenever I'm home, I go and I drum with them. But in Oklahoma, we have a gentleman who I'm much enamored and endeared to. His name is Jeruba Lambeth. We call him Baba Jeruba. And he is one who has drum circles all the time, and he always invites us to come and sit with him and drum.
Wow, that is great. So I think you just answered a few people's questions. Christina was wanting to know if you were born in Africa. You were born in New Orleans, right?
I was born in New Orleans, but my theory is I was not born in Africa. Africa was born in me.
Beautiful,
And that's my culture. So I have the best of both worlds. I have the African culture that I like to study. I have the American culture that I have to study, albeit painful sometimes. There's also joy in that as well.
You're right.
True. And you know, art. One of the things we have been working to kind of flip the tables on for 24 years here at 24th Street is that children's theater. There's a tendency for a lot of people to to only focus on the sweet stuff of children's theater. And our philosophy is that it's a great tool to learn about life. And that you can do powerful art for young audiences, even serious stuff, even sad stuff.
Exactly.
And art is a great vehicle for that. Stories are a great way to do that. It doesn't have to just be, and they all lived happily ever after every time, right?
Precisely. One of the things that I think is, again, that makes African storytelling so powerful is that, yes, they do tell the hard facts of life, and therefore they don't sugarcoat life for their children, which again toughens that child and allows that child to go out into the world and be equipped to deal with the pain and what have you.
Right. It's valuable.
It is
valuable.
very valuable.
Hey, what is the shortest story that you know, Al?
The shortest story I know is Once Upon a Time.
Oh, good, because one of the audience members was asking you for an encore, so that suffices, I think, right? That's a story.
I can do that, and the only other thing I can tell you is that my grandmother was also a storyteller, and she also told me the story of the Dirt Dauber, which is also a little short tale, but this is what it taught me. The Dirt Dauber, who was building a house, decided to build it upside down. All the other little animals who came around said, "Mr. Dirt Dauber, you're building your house upside down. There's a big old black cloud coming this way. That cloud's going to open up and flood your whole hay, and you're going to be washed away forever." And the Dirt Dauber said, "I know." But he could build the house upside down. Now, the big old black cloud opened up, filled the hole full of muddy water. The little Dirt Dauber was striking and fighting the water, and he was being washed away, and all the animals looked at him and said, "See, we tried to tell you." He said, And he said, I know! And he was washed away forever. And my grandmother said the moral of the story is, if you know, don't tell me you know. Show me you know by doing it, you know?
That is great. That is great. Man, it sticks with you. And next week, by the way, you were telling classic folklore, right?
Yes.
Next week we have a storyteller with us named Santino Jimenez, who is going to tell personal stories from his family, stories from his grandfather. So much like what you just shared with us from your abuela.
Exactly.
Wow. So was she a professional, your grandmother, or she just told stories to the family and community?
Oh, no. If you cross Miss Rose, you got a story.
No.
Period.
So it wasn't always welcome. Like you didn't pay for your grandma to tell you a story.
Oh, no.
You're in trouble. But you remember them fondly, I assume, right?
Always fondly, between, and again, this is a perfect example. I never dreamed that I would be a storyteller. But when I auditioned for the Artist in Residence program in Oklahoma, I was going to audition to teach theater, and the list was so darn long, I looked over to the right, and there was storytelling. There were only 3 people there. And I thought, hey, the odds are better there. So I went in, auditioned, and I auditioned with that story of the Dirt Dauber, and the rest is history.
But you were a well-trained actor from the University of Oklahoma, which home of James Garner, right?
I am.
And others came from that great theater school.
Larry Drake.
Yeah, so storytelling was already in your canon. You were already an actor and a performer. Right,
So, yeah.
right.
And summer programs with kids telling stories was a part of that.
Yeah, that is just so great that in this day and age you're still passing that work down face to face. You have time for one more question?
Yes, I do.
And this comes from our friend Bennett Schneider, who will be performing in this series in a couple of weeks. He's doing European stories from Oscar Wilde, and Bennett was asking about the spider as opposed to any other animal. Is that just a creative choice that stuck, or was there some specific reason they chose a spider?
Well, again, the spider, because of the spider's web, I believe that is also a pattern in some of the clothing that they do, the weaving, the idea of weaving. And so it just sort of evolved into that kind of thing, that people watched spiders. They didn't really kill them because they also were helpful to the farmer, because they ate the aphids and what have you from the plants. And so it was a way of honoring. And so there are animals in the African culture that we honor. For instance, the antelope was given to the West African tribe to teach mankind how to plow. There's a story about that. And it's only because you saw the animal's behavior. He strikes the ground with his hooves and then uses his horns to dig the trowel and to turn over the grass so he can eat the roots.
Of course, he has dirt in his nose, but he doesn't care.
So the Tuaregs decided that this is how they would pay honor. And they tell that story.
Wow. You have been teaching me for over 35 years, sir, and you continue to do it.
Well, thank you.
Every time I'm around you, I learn stuff.
And I learned from you as well, so you understand that.
Well, that's what art is, right? It's not just for kids. You learn all your life with it.
Yes, you do.
Well, I really, really thank you for performing live from Oklahoma City this afternoon, Al. It means a lot to us.
Thank you very much, Al.
Thank you also.
Ladies and gentlemen, the fabulous Al Bostick.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Hope to do it again real soon.
And join us next week when Santino Jimenez will be here with those stories from his family. In the meantime, have a great week, everybody.
Nos vemos la próxima semana con Santino Jiménez.